All right, now we are learning the Dvar Malchut of this week. It's Parshas Kitisa. Parshas Kitisa is very interesting because it has in it the breaking of the tablets and the regret of the Jewish people. How Moses prayed to God for forgiveness and God forgave them, and the breaking of the tablets is because the Jews worshipped the golden calf. The Jews worshipped the golden calf, and Moses broke the first tablets, and then afterwards God said, I'm going to wipe out all the Jews, and Moses prayed for the Jews, and God gave them the 13 attributes of mercy. So there's a lot of ups and downs in this week's Torah portion. God took the Jews out of Egypt with big miracles, and he gave them the Torah, and then Moses came down 40 days later with the whole Torah, right? They heard the 10 commandments. Then Moses went up to receive the rest of the commandments, and they thought that he delayed. The Jewish people thought Moses wasn't going to come back. And for some almost unexplainable reason, they said, well, Moses is not going to come back. You know what? Let's worship the golden calf. And everybody said, well, that sounds like a good idea. But they heard God say not to do it just 40 days earlier. So it sort of doesn't make any sense. So it's the reasons are given that as soon as Moses was gone, then everyone started to sort of think for themselves, and that was big problems. Something like we just finished learning about last week about King Saul, who was supposed to wipe out all of Amalek, and he let the king live for a day. He wanted to bring him back in a cage. He thought it would be more of a glorious victory. And because of that, we had all the troubles. He shouldn't have followed his logic. So sometimes following your own mind can be big problems. And that's what the golden calf was. You're following because your mind can be used either to direct you to the truth, or your mind can be used to justify your urges. Okay, and that's how God made people, that they have urges which are opposite what God wants, but he also gave us a mind and a soul to correct that. That's why we're in the world. That's the whole idea why we're in the world, is to correct the world. And by means of doing that, the soul gets even higher than it was before. Okay, but meanwhile, we have this bizarre story about the golden calf, etc. Here we go. All right, first of all, this is the month of Adar. This is the month of Adar. All right, but when the Rebbe was speaking there were two Adars in that year, and the Rebbe had suffered a stroke in the second Adar. Suffered a stroke. But this is like, just a month before the Rebbe suffered a stroke. So here we go. A little less, actually. No, I'm sorry. A little bit more than a month before the Rebbe suffered a stroke. The first stroke was on this the same day, the 27th day of the second Adar. Okay. Let's begin. This week's Torah portion is talking about things that go from one end to the other. What do they call it? Diametric opposites. First of all, the Jewish people received the first tablets. Then the Jewish people sinned, and Moses broke the tablets. Then Moses went up and got forgiveness. Then Moses saw the glory of God, and God gave him the 13 attributes of mercy. Then God gave the second tablets, until finally it says the Quran or Panei Moshe, that Moses' face shined. Moses came down with the second tablets. That's when his face shined before. The Avalpi, that even though this is talking about Meoros, is talking about occurrences that occurred one after the other. Right? There were the first tablets. The Jewish people sinned with the golden calf. Moses broke the tablets. He went up on Mount Sinai and asked God for forgiveness, and God forgave them. Then they received the second tablets. So it's really one. It was one the continuation. Hari Nosef Lakach. In addition to this, that we can understand why is that the Torah which the Torah is a teaching, tell us about such length about these terrible things that happen. The Torah tells us in very, very great detail how it is that the Jewish people made the golden calf and what they said and how they danced around it. And especially we can say, well, listen, what happened. It's a thing of the past. Even if beganus behema tamea, it says the Torah tries to avoid even saying the word impure. Behema tamea. It says behema asher lo tahor. When it talks about the animals which are permissible to eat and which are forbidden, it says the animals which are pure and those are impure. It doesn't say impure. It says the animals which are pure and the animals which are not pure. In Hebrew, the word for impure is a different word. There's tahor, it means pure, and tameh means impure. So it tries to avoid this word. Even when talking about an animal, it doesn't talk about negative things. Why, line after line, paragraph after paragraph, it tells us about how the Jews sinned with the golden calf. Why in such great detail? These are things which are different from one end to the other. The furthest you can possibly have between the first tablets and the sin and the second tablets. Why jump around so much? The Torah could have just said, very simply, that God gave the first tablets, Moshe broke them, he saw the Jewish people were not fit, and he got the second tablets, that's all. Why does the Torah have to tell us in such great detail the reason how the Jewish people sinned, etc.? Luchas Rishoni is the first tablets that the Jews got, were supposed to get. This is the highest that can possibly be given from above. It says that not only were the words what God wanted to be said, but even the tablets themselves and the letters were all formed and carved out by God. God provided the tablets, he provided the words, he did the whole thing. The tablets. Breaking these tablets because of the sin of the egel, of the golden calf, this was the worst descent, the worst fall that's ever been in history of man. I mean, maybe you can compare it to, and of course it is compared to the sin of Adam. Excuse me. The sin of Adam. Adam was the handwork of God, and he saw God all the time. God was talking to him, and all of a sudden, he did it the opposite of what God wanted, so he fell. The same thing happened to the Jewish people. The Jewish people, God gave them all these gifts, took them out of Egypt, did everything he could for them, gave them the Torah, and suddenly one day they fell. But then afterwards, there were the 13 attributes of mercy. The 13 attributes of mercy, and God showed himself to God. God showed himself to Moses. And then it pops back up again after the breaking of the vessels, the breaking of the tablets. And afterwards, God gave to Moses the second tablets. But the second tablets, that was a totally different type of tablets. First of all, the tablets were hewn out by Moshe. Moses, he found out, he had to discover the tablets, and he had to carve them out, and he had to bring them to God. Because of the sin and the breaking of the first tablets. I'm sorry. And it was given in a totally different time. Natinat Luchot Rishonot, the giving of the first tablets, in the end of 40 days, the first 40 days that Moses was on Mount Sinai. And the giving of the second tablets, that was after the last 40 days on Yom Kippur. How did it go? The Jewish people came to Mount Sinai. They heard God speak. God told them the 10 commandments. Really, God only told them the first two of the 10 commandments. They couldn't bear the rest. But nevertheless, they received the 10 commandments on Mount Sinai. Moses gave over the rest. Then Moses went up on Sinai for 40 days to receive the tablets. He received the tablets. God explained everything to him. Moses came down after 40 days, and he saw the Jewish people were worshiping the golden calf. But people mistakenly thought that Moses wasn't returning. They delayed, whatever. They made a miscalculation. So he saw that they were worshiping the golden calf, and he broke the tablets. Then he went up for another 40 days, and he asked God for forgiveness, and he came down. Then he went up for a third 40 days. And that's when God gave him the second tablets. Nevertheless, the whole thing comes together in one Torah portion, one continuation. So it's understood that it's very important that we should know all of these topics are really one big subject. How are they big subject? It seems that they're totally opposite. We'll see. And let's say it in another way, that all of them are good. How is it good? The Jewish people worship the golden calf. That's the worst thing. We'll see. Parshatenu, in our Torah portion, is talking about pratim, details about malat aluchot rishonot. In our Torah reading that we're reading this week, it goes into great detail about how wonderful the first tablets were. Luchot Evan Katuvim Be'etiva Elokim. They were tablets of stone that were written with the finger of God. Luchot Katuvet Mishtei Abraham. It says that the letters went all the way through the tablets. Mizeh Mizeh. It was amazing. The tablets were written, the letters went all the way through, and whichever side you read, it came out to be the same thing. Which usually, if letters go all the way through, so one side is like a mirror image, and the other side is proper. But here, both sides were proper. The tablets were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God, and it was carved on the tablets. That's the first tablets. Until the second tablets, it says not only on the second tablets, when God gave the second tablets to Moses, it talks about the first tablets. It says, carve out 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, with a kafadimion, something like the first one. Second tablets did not reach the level of the first tablets. In the Holy Temple were both, it says, but there was the first tablets and also the broken tablets. At first glance, this detail of the first tablets should have been written in a few weeks ago in Mishpatim. There is the place, the main thing where it talks about the first tablets. If you look over there, you see what happened. How did the Torah go? There was Shemot, how Moses was born. Then Va'era, God speaks to Moses, and there's the first 7 plagues. Parshat Bo, the last 3 plagues. And then Beshalach, how the Jews actually leave Egypt, that Paro runs after them, and his people are drowned. Then comes Yitro. Yitro is the giving of the Torah. Giving the Torah. Then Mishpatim. Mishpatim is the continuation, more laws that came from the Torah. And at the end of Parshat Mishpatim, there's a sort of a time jump. It jumps back before the Torah was given. It tells things that happened before the Torah was given. That's where it should have talked about the first tablets. That's where it should have mentioned about the first tablets. Because it talks about before the Torah was given. Now it should tell about what the first tablets were. Then it should have been written at the end of Mishpatim. There's the place, the main thing where it talks about the first tablets. God said to Moses, go up to me on the mountain, and I will give you the tablets. And the end of Parshas Mishpatim. Here in our Torah portion, it was enough that it should be written short, right? They should say that the Jewish people received the tablets, and they sinned with the Egel, and they were broken. And then God gave Moses, when he finished speaking to him on Mount Sinai, the second tablets. And after that, the people saw that the first tablets, and then people saw that Moses delayed and he broke them, and then talk about the second tablets. But the first tablets should have been talked about weeks earlier. Why is it that the tablets are spoken about here? It's sort of like putting salt on the wound. You know what type of tablets God broke? Let me tell you. Whoa, these were Achmatim Shebamakom Medaber order. When it's talking about the sin and the breaking of the tablets at first, it should be something new about how the tablets were, the first tablets were. This is like lag l'rosh. It's like putting the salt on the wound. It's like kicking a person when he's down. The Jewish people sinned. The first tablets were broken. And now God says, and you want to know how good the first tablets were? Those were totally different than the second. The first tablets were written by me. They were given. I broke them. Why go through it again? So it must be that the first tablets are not something secondary to the egel, to the golden calf and the breaking of the tablets, but somehow or other, talking about how great the first tablets were, this is one big topic. The first tablets, breaking the tablets, and the last tablets. Somehow or other, this is one unit of good. How can this be? We'll see. But this, I feel even according to what Rashi said, that there's no chronological order necessarily in the Torah. What happened with the Egel was before. Everyone agrees that what happened with the Egel, this was before what we read about last week. What do we read about in the last 2 weeks now? the building of the tabernacle. Well, the building of the tabernacle came chronologically after the breaking of the tablets. And in the Torah, it's not written in that order. Last week and the week before, we learned about the tabernacle. And after that, we learned about something that happened previously, the breaking of the tablets. That would happen, the breaking of the tablets with the golden calf, that happened way before the building of the tabernacle. On the 17th day of Tammuz, Moses broke the tablets. On Yom Kippur, which was 80 days later, Nitrotze, God was pleased by Moses, and afterwards they started to build the tabernacle. So if so, this was a long, not Ratzah Kodesh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Then the day after that, they started to build the tabernacle. So when did they finish building the tabernacle? Like a half a year later, they finished building it. So at first glance, it's not doesn't explain why you have to mention over here about the first tablets. Shemakomo, it should have been over there in Mishpatim. Number two, the main thing is, according to what is known, that b'makom she'omrim ein muktam muchar b'Torah, when do we say that there's no chronological order in the Torah? Yeshnu tam, there's some sort of a reason for this. Call Dvar, everything that's in the Torah, Gam Seder the Torah, even the order of the Torah, is very, very exact. So, for instance, here in this week's Torah portion, what do we have? It talks about the breaking of the tablets, right? After the tablets were broken, Moses went up to God and got forgiveness. Then he went up a third time, received the second tablets. And then the Jewish people began building the tabernacle. But in our Torah, the way we read it, talking about the building of the tabernacle, that was last week and the week before. So we're reading not in the order that things happened. Last week and the week before, we learned about the building of the tabernacle. And this week, we read about something that happened before the building of the tabernacle, the breaking of the tablets, and God forgiving the Jewish people. So the Rebbe says there must be a reason for this. So we have several questions. One question is, why over here with the breaking of the tablets does it remind us or even tell us for the first time how great the first tablets were? Why mention it here? It should have been mentioned several weeks earlier in Parshat Mishpatim. Number two, why is it not in the proper order? Why is it that talks about the breaking of the tablets here? And really it happened before the tabernacle was built. And the tabernacle being built, we learned about that last week and the week before. So that's not in the right order. So we have to understand why is it this way, and why are they talking here in this Parshat Kitisa? Why is it all mentioned in one? How great the first tablets were, and the breaking of the vessels, breaking of the tablets, and etc. And it's mentioned here, even though it happened before the building of the tabernacle. And the building of the tabernacle we learned last week before, so it doesn't make any sense. In addition, we also have to understand another thing it says, and there's in the end of this week's Torah portion, it talks about the 3 holidays. Says the Rebbe, the question is even stronger. In Parshat Kitisa, it's known that the Torah portion shows on something that's happening. The name of the Torah portion usually is the title of the whole entire thing. The whole entire. According to this, we have to understand why is this week's Torah portion called Kitisa, means to lift up. What's in this portion? Things that lift the Jews up. What lifts the Jews up? They worship the Egel. They worship the golden calf. What's going on? Why is this week's Torah portion called elevating, being elevated? This mityaches, this, when it says to elevate the Jewish people, lift up, means actually to count them. This is talking about really the commandment to give, that every Jew had to give half of a shekel. It's got no connection to the rest of the Torah portion. The rest of the Torah portion is talking about the first tablets, the sin of the golden calf, God wants to wipe out the Jews, the second tablets, etc. That's the rest of the Torah portion. But the rest of the Torah portion is called only on a few sentences that are in the beginning. When God says to Moses, if you want to count the Jewish people, then count them according to, have everybody give a coin and count the coins. And the whole Torah is called according to this counting of the coins, when that's not really the content of the whole Torah portion. It has no connection. The counting of the coins has no connection, apparently, to the whole rest of the Torah portion about the golden calf. Like we said before, the majority of this Torah portion talks about things which are totally different. The first tablets, the breaking of the tablets, they have no connection to the beginning of the Torah portion of counting the Jews. Even more, and the worshiping the golden calf, which is that takes up a very big part of our Torah portion. This is the biggest descent, the biggest embarrassment that there's ever been for the Jewish people, that's ever been really in the history of the world. Here, God himself spoke to the Jewish people, told them, don't worship idols. It's the second of the 10 commandments. And it's the same God that took them out of Egypt, was giving them manna from heaven. How could they do something which is so blatantly, obviously against what God wanted? And they knew that God existed. They know that God exists. God is sending them, raining manna from heaven to them. They know that, and they know that God said clearly, don't worship idols. The first of the 10 commandments, I am God that took you out of Egypt. And the second one is, don't worship any other God except for the one that took you out of Egypt. That's me. The golden calf didn't take them out of Egypt. Even though there's an explanation to that, but that's not, it was not the time, right? It was obvious that they were doing something wrong. They were doing something wrong. And what's the sign they're doing something wrong? As soon as Moses came down from Mount Sinai, they stopped, right? They stopped doing it. And they realized it was wrong. So it was wrong. It was totally wrong. There's no explanation. It wasn't that the rabbis told them. It wasn't that the times had changed, that they got bad education or something. It was just 40 days after they heard God say, don't worship the golden calf. And they did it. This is the biggest descent that can possibly be, the most embarrassing, shameful story that could possibly be told. It says, by means of this even more, if the Jews had not sinned with the golden calf, there would be no death in the world. It would be like it was before Adam ate from the tree. And when they worshipped the golden calf, there came back death to the world. the sin of the goal of the tree of the knowledge of the after it stopped, death stopped at Mount Sinai. That this was the Rosh Hashoresh Kol Chataim. It became that the golden calf is the father, the great granddaddy of all sins. Like it says, Ubiyom Pakadati, any day that I visit you, says God, when I get mad at you, Upakadati Aleichem Chatachem, and that I will remember all of your sins. I'll remember the sin of, it says, Tamid Kefkod Aleichem Avonotechem. Whenever I remember your sins, I will remember a little bit of this sin of the golden calf. Now, as if I think maybe I should forgive the Jewish people, I should go a little bit light on them. I say, yeah, maybe I should. Wait, then I remember the sin of the golden calf. Nah, I can't do it. In Peronius Brother Israel, it says no punishments come to the Jewish people unless there's without a little bit of remembering. God remembers the sin of the golden calf. It was such a spit in God's face, the worshiping the golden calf, that God can't let the Jews go on it. True, he always loved the Jews, and he'll always bring the Jews back, but nevertheless, every time they sin, it's a little reminder to him. The diuk lahipach, exactly the opposite, is of the title of this whole Torah portion, kitisa, elevating the Jews, elevating the head of the Jews. And also at the end of this week's Torah portion, when it says that Moses' face shined, what's it in English? I said shone. It's shone. Is that word? Shone. Anyway, it shined. And we have to also understand. It says that when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, that his face was shining. The famous mistake of Michelangelo, that it says in the Torah, Quran, the word for Quran means a horn. So he thought that Moses had horns. I don't know how he thought of thing like that. The truth doesn't make any sense. First of all, it says that his face shines. So you want to make horns, maybe they're on his face. I didn't have to look at the statue. Maybe they're on his, it could be they're on his forehead, huh? Could be there are. Anyway, whatever it is, it's a mistake. Quran means that there were, Quran, Karne Hod, that there were, what do I say, shining of, rays of glory shined from Moses' face. When did it shine in Moses' face? When he came down with the second tablets. This also has to be explained. Madua Nosva, the Moshe, why was it added to Moses that his face shined only after he received the second tablets? Why not when he received the first tablets? He came down with the first tablets. Halo kavar nitna miziv shechina. It was given in the first 40 days when he was on Mount Sinai. Just like the third time he went up. The revelation of godliness in the first tablets, they were the work of God. They were much higher than the last tablets. The last tablets were the handwork of Moses. So why didn't Moses' face shine when he received the first tablets? Or when he came down from after God forgave the Jews the second time he went up? Why only at the end of the third time that Moses went up on Mount Sinai? In addition to that, giving the first tablets, this came after a tremendous high revelation of Matan Torah, giving the Torah. That's when Moses' face should shine. What happened? Moses went up on Mount Sinai, and he came down on the 6th day of Sivan, and he told the Jewish people the 10 commandments. Why didn't his face shine then? Why not? When did his face shine? After the Jews sinned with the golden calf. And Moses went up a second 40 days. And he stayed up there for another 40 days. So actually Moses, practically speaking, the second time stayed up there for 80 days. He was there the last, if so, how can it possibly be that the receiving of the second tablets, that Moses' face shined? Okay, so we have a lot of questions here, and God willing, we'll deal with all those questions tomorrow. Main question is, how can this week's Torah portion be called when you elevate the head of the Jews? Ki tisa, when it has such terrible things that happened in it. Number one. Number two, why does it have such terrible things in such great detail? Question number three, why is here explained the greatness of the first tablets when God could have done that earlier in the end of Parshat Mishpatim, which was like 4 weeks ago? Why couldn't he have done it then when he talked also about going up on Mount Sinai and receiving the tablets? Then it should have been talked about the first tablets. Why mention it here when the tablets are broken? It's like putting salt on the wound. And another question is, what is the first part of this Torah portion, which talks about counting the Jews? That's what it means, elevating their heads, counting them. What's that first part about counting the Jews? What does that got to do with the rest of the Torah portion? And we're going to see also what's the connection with this to Purim, but that we're all going to learn tomorrow.